Isang pinagpala at magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Today, as we celebrate the dedication of Lateran Basilica in Rome, there are four major basilicas in Rome: the St. John Lateran, St. Mary Major, St. Paul outside the wall, and St. Peter's Basilica. Now, this was the first to be constructed, to be built, and it was dedicated by Pope Sylvester in the first in year 324, November 9, 324. It marked the end of the persecution of Christianity. So the Christianity was accepted by the state. Before, it was not accepted. If you were a Christian, it was a crime, as it were. But now, it's the end of the persecution, and the Lateran Basilica is the first church to be consecrated after a long period of persecution. At the same time, we are reminded that we should not focus ourselves on a particular building, St. John Lateran. Why is it called St. John Lateran? The land was donated by the Laterani family, where Constantine built a basilica. So it's very clear from the three readings that we have, from an excerpt from the prophet Ezekiel and from the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians and the gospel reading, that when we say temple, it's not a physical building. It is a people who are consecrated to God, a people who should reflect, mirror the holiness of God. So in the first reading, we saw how the prophet Ezekiel saw the grace of God, as it was manifest in the water that was flowing from the temple, how it transformed many things. The salty water became fresh so that it could nurture plants and living, fruit-bearing trees. And then wherever it went, it flowed, there was transformation. And this is the power of God's grace, the power of God's love. It is always transformative. It always transforms us. It changes us. The same reminder that Paul gives us, the second letter, we are sacred. So let us not ruin, let us not destroy the holiness that God has shared with us. It is quite strong language, for he who destroys God's temple, God will also destroy him. So we are responsible to care for our spiritual growth, spiritual response to God's invitation to share fully his life. And so what do? We care for this body, this temple that God has given us. So in practical terms, for instance, in coming to church, how do we prepare ourselves? Sometimes things have become routine, things have become mechanical, and yet we come to encounter Jesus. We come to contribute to the holiness of the church by struggling to be faithful to God, to be faithful to our prayer life, to be faithful to our works of charity. So there are many ways by which we can intensify the holiness that should be found in our lives. In the gospel, we see how Jesus was just frustrated, and perhaps we can see him express holy anger, because the people during his time, they made the temple a marketplace. And yet it's interesting to note that when he said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Of course, the Jews were thinking about the physical building, which took about more than 46 years to complete the temple. But then Jesus was, as it's clearly stated in the gospel, he was referring to his body. After 3 days, he will rise. So the Lord continues to visit us, to visit his dwelling place, your heart. What will he find if he comes today? We hope and pray we are always ready, prepared to accept him, for his coming, his visit, his dwelling will bring about blessings, fullness of life for all.